On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome inside episode 393 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. And there is action at the Canadian Tire Center today. The first on ice will be tomorrow, but the players have reported it's production meetings, it's medicals, it's physicals. So today we're going to give our SensCentral day one line combinations. This is unlikely to be what DJ Smith uses, but we've got rationale for each of, well, all the lines. We're going right down from the top until, well, the fourth line in the AHL. We'll have some fun with that. And then we invite on the 10th overall pick from this past draft. We introduced you to Timmy Stützle last November, and this year we've got Tyler Boucher for you. It's his first podcast, first video interview since he was picked, and he goes through that whole draft process. It's a really great interview with him. He tells us what players he models his game after, what it was like growing up with a dad who had a 13-year NHL career, and a scouting report on Jake Sanderson. It's blunt, but, well, you can't say he's wrong either. After that, we'll get back to our organizational value rankings. We're going right up to number 10, so single digits ahead. We'll get into all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd, and Pilsy, it's a new year at the Canadian Tire Center. Players are there, but there is a looming shadow over training camp, and that is the remaining unsigned Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, it's tough to see, and I think it's starting to get tougher to see because at least before we had the reassurance of, well, hey, there's lots of other RFAs that still aren't signed. Lots of other teams that have arguably their most important piece of their franchise still waiting for a new contract. Yeah, some teams, Vancouver. 2 of them. So, and now it's getting a little bit closer to the panic button because you see Rasmus Dahlin, he signed a bridge deal with Buffalo. Kaprizov finally got the mega money deal he was after, so he's locked up long term. And then Robert Thomas as well signed a deal with the St. Louis Blues. So now really it's just Brady, the 2 guys in Vancouver, and that's kind of it. So they're the ones holding out, and it doesn't seem like we're inching much closer. I know Elliot Friedman had an update, but I'll say what I said last time. I'm not grabbing onto that too much until we see some actual results here. Everything that's being said is just kind of speculation at this point. And I'm not saying obviously Elliot Friedman is a great insider, and I'm sure he has great sources that are feeding him proper information. But for now, this is all just hearsay. So we're still anxiously waiting to see that tweet from the Ottawa Senators that Brady Tkachuk has signed.
Yeah, Dahlin, 3 years at $6 million annual average value. Kirill Kaprizov, the reigning rookie of the year, the 24-year-old rookie of the year. He signed a 5-year deal worth $9 million per season. That's big money, but he is a big time player. And then Robert Thomas, already Stanley Cup champion, but he had struggles in the past year. He signed a 2-year deal, annual average value of 2.8. And it should be noted that he lived at the Tkachuk's house for a year and a half. So he's good friends with both Matthew, a former teammate of his with the London Knights, and Brady as well. So I wonder if they were going back and forth, but of course a different stratosphere for that signing. One of the remaining unsigned players, also a really good friend of Brady Tkachuk, and Quinn Hughes. But let's get into what Elliot Friedman said before we got to move on past this, because it's day one of training camp. The excitement is growing. We've got our line combination start of camp. We got Tyler Boucher on this show and 4 great players as we inch our way closer to the top of our organizational value ranking. But Pilsy, I need to get my head out of this pretzel that's been squeezed so tightly together when I read that it's structure that is holding up this contract, and maybe not even structure in terms of bonuses, which we know is always contentious ever since Danny Heatley collected on his $4 million and wouldn't allow the trade to happen until he did. Oh my God. How is trade protection holding up this deal? It sounds like the Sens are hesitant to give him a no trade clause in the final years. What happened to unparalleled success? What happened to Brady Tkachuk being the centerpiece of this rebuild? How can you not guarantee him that he's not going to get traded at a moment's notice? This seems like the biggest mind-bending thing of these negotiations that came out with Elliot Friedman's latest blog.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at a situation, there's a bunch of kind of leverage points and opportunities in contract negotiations. Signing bonuses, I'm completely convinced are not an option. They're not on the table. Like if Brady is holding out for signing bonuses, then he's going to continue to hold out. I think Melnick's going to stay firm on that. So that's where that's at. So then you start looking at the next leverage opportunities with no movement clauses, like you talked about. They did give Thomas Chabot, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the last 4 years of his contract include a no movement clause of some sort. I think it's a 10-team no trade list or something like that. So maybe Brady's asking for something more than that, which they're not comfortable with. They're saying, hey, this is what we gave our franchise defenseman. This is the tops that we're going to offer you as well. But I'm with you, man. Like this is Brady Tkachuk we're talking about. Like, if anything, like, they should have the mindset, we're never going to consider trading you. Like, take all the no movement clauses you want, right? Because we want to keep you forever. Like, I don't see a situation where 8 years down the road, Brady isn't able to perform. Maybe the points aren't at a, $8-9 million level, but what he brings to the ice and what he brings to this franchise is worth that kind of money. So I don't see a situation where the Sens need to be holding out and being stingy on no movement clauses.
And lock him up before you realize, and I mean, you can think about what he'll bring in the postseason, but that value is only going to increase because his game is built for when the games mean the most. So if there's an opportunity, if you're off by 500,000 or whatever it is, just do it. You have to, yes, stay firm in your beliefs, sure, whatever. And Danny Heatley ruined the Ottawa Senators because both of these leverage points are ones that Heatley used against Ottawa. They had the trade ready to go in Edmonton, and he said, nah, I'm good. And then the bonus hit. So both of those things come together, and now you're looking at literally 11 years later. You're still stuck in that. And you have to make exceptions to your rules. And this guy has shown time and time again that he is the exception, right? He was the guy who skated funny, top 5 pick. That doesn't happen often. And he showed that that wasn't a problem. There's just so much to go and just get this guy signed. One thing where I'm holding out a bit of hope is Mike Johnson, very well-respected color commentator with TSN. He put out his predictions for all 5 of the remaining UFAs, or RFAs rather, as of yesterday. And he has nailed all 3 of the ones that he had. He gave himself a B+ on Robert Thomas. He called 2 years at $3 million. He signed for 2.8. That's the furthest he's been off on the 3 that signed. And he has Brady signing for 8 years at 8.4. So
wow.
If Mike Johnson, and he's as locked in as many in and around the game, you got to think that that's one part where Sens fans can hold on hope that a long-term deal is still in the cards.
Yeah, I mean, at 8.4, like, that's a nice deal for Brady. Now, I think the next part of leverage negotiations, we talked about this with Matthew, is with regards to the structure, is how it's going to work out throughout the contract, because Matthew's going to want Brady is going to want the same thing as Matthew, where his final year is going to be a big number because he wants that base so that he can move on from there. Yeah,
that's fine. Like Chabot, and by the way, you were right. It's a 10-team no trade list for the last 4 years of Shabby's deal. But in the last 3 years of it, he's making, 3 of the last 4. The last year he makes 8, but the 3 years before that, he's making $10 million a year. So we know the Sens aren't afraid to backload contracts. And as we are seeing with many of the higher end players that can control the structure of their contract, as escrow is higher in 3 and 4, or in year 3, it seems, they're lowering the salary for that year, so they have to pay less. And Chabot's is $4 million for that year. So, anyways, that being said, let's move on. There's too much excitement around.
Wait, just one more thing before we move on, and this is from Ian Mendes' article, and I didn't really fully understand this, but I can't believe this is actually happening. Is Brady is able to use as a massive leverage point. The Sens are the only team, now that Rasmus Dahlin is signed, that is below the salary floor, and we are 2-3 weeks away from the home opener. And I did not realize the penalties for being below the floor.
They're $3 million below.
So it's not like they can just like easily make that happen. Even if they sign Ennis, like Mendes says, that's $750K. You're still got
I don't
a
know.
bunch of
Maybe
money
he's
here.
got some leverage now too.
Yeah, no kidding. But the crazy fact is, if the Senators, like, they can't play this game of chicken too long because they have to swerve and use that money somehow, whether it's on Brady or whether it's on 1, 2, 3, or 4 players that they just pick up just to put a dollar amount there. They cannot go into the start of the season below the floor because that's going to cost Melnyk much more money probably than what they're apart on Brady's contract. I think it was something like $4 million or something, and like the penalties are just crazy. And to think,
Forfeited draft picks.
Yeah, forfeited draft pick. To think that we're in a situation where the team cannot get to the floor. Like, maybe if this was Tampa, we're like, okay, this is tough. You got to figure out how to get under the cap here, under the ceiling. The ceiling. We're talking about getting to the floor, and for Brady to be able to be like, hey, have it your way. Let's see how long you guys can last here. You're going to have to do something. And if you get me signed, that easily takes away your problem getting to the floor. So I just think that is a wild scenario that the Ottawa Senators and Brady Tkachuk are in, because I can't think of a single time in the cap era where a team getting to the floor has been a major part of leverage in contract negotiations. Like, it's just crazy.
Unparalleled success, baby. We're here. But training camp is actually here. Coming up, we'll get into who we believe should, not will, but should start together as lines as the Senators unveiled their entire training camp roster. They split it into 3 groups. We'll get into all of that. Tyler Boucher still coming up, and our organizational value rankings. But first, let's tell you a word about our friends at Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. Comes in 16 amazing flavors as well. 8 are chocolate nut, 8 are nut free, but all Built Bars are 100% covered in that great chocolate flavor. They're soft and easy to chew. Built Bars are great for the health conscious guy or girl as well, because you can lose or maintain weight while indulging in a delicious treat. The bars are low in sugar, low in calorie, but they're high in protein and high in fiber, a nutritional grand slam. We'll get back to Pillsy's pick of the week maybe later on, but we got so much to get into, and Built Bars are going to fire me up for the rest of this show. And you can go check out all the great flavors available for you. We recommend the mix box. Try them all. Why not? And then decide what you'd like. But when you do that, use promo code LOCKED15. It's Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order. It's Built Bar, reinventing the protein bar.
Ooh, I like that. Now, we're heading close to the season here, guys, and we're talking about hitting the panic button if Brady Tkachuk doesn't sign by the home opener. Well, if you haven't figured out your TV subscriptions before the home opener, you better be hovering over that panic button, because you do not want to be that chump that the home opener starts and you're like, oh, I'll just figure it out hours before the game, and you can't get your login to work. You're going to miss the game. You're freaking out. You're panicking. You're trying to use other friends' passwords. It's not working. Don't live that way. Get DirecTV Stream. You can get all your entertainment in one spot without the hassle. It's called DirecTV Stream, guys. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, your favorite movies, and all the TV shows you love, all conveniently in one place. No more juggling remotes. No need to buy another device ever again. And probably the best part about DirecTV Stream is there's no annual contracts. You're not locked in. You're not stuck. So get rid of the clutter. Get rid of the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream, guys. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Contents vary by a package. Check it out today, guys. DirecTV Stream at directtv.com.
Make sure you're locked on Senators wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, or on the Odyssey app. And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. It does go a long way. And we're trying to add a little visual element on our YouTube channel. And that includes, as we go through our line-by-line camp combinations, we're going to have that up at the bottom of the screen. Make it nice and easy to follow along. Pillsy, let's get right into it. And let's get past this first line, because Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, they don't have their typical left winger. So who do you think should get the first crack at placeholding with those two?
Well, we've already kind of been hinted at that it's going to be Nick Paul that will be the placeholder there. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because Paul's a guy, I would be comfortable putting Nick Paul on the left wing of any line, really. Like, it's not ideal, but like if you had to do it for a game or two, I think Nick Paul could mesh well with Norris and Batherson. He's got the size, he's got the hockey IQ that he can stack up against other teams' lines in a short period of time, right? In a small sample size. And he could also play second line. He could play third line. And we've kind of got him penciled in on the fourth line is where he probably will end up. So Nick Paul, I think, is the guy, because you don't want to put maybe someone like Stützle or something, and then you got to figure out how to change it later. Keep everybody else in their aligned spots and just have Nick Paul stand here for now, I think.
Nick Paul does it all, right? You can plug and play him wherever he needs to be. And I think he has some similarities to Brady. Of course, different players, but they're both power forwards. They can both go up and down the ice. They're going to be F1 in on the forecheck as often as possible. So I think that this is a good start for Nick Paul. And, you're not going to replace Brady Tkachuk. It's just not going to happen. They need to get him into camp. We've already discussed it as soon as possible. But I like Nick Paul here too. And also, you mentioned it. He's likely, more than likely, going to start in a bottom six role. So by moving him up, you're keeping the second pair of wingers together, because Stützle and Connor Brown, they're going to start together. They had such good chemistry last year. It's about figuring out who the center is between those two. So as you move a guy from the bottom six, where we know there is a spot open, now you're giving another guy a tryout in that spot. And can they fit with an Austin Watson or a Colin White, an Alex Formenton, those sort of players? So I like moving Nick Paul up, and we've got him as the likely candidate. And I think of all of our line combinations, especially the lower ones, I think this is the most likely scenario that DJ Smith will go to as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so people aren't driving off the road and yelling at their steering wheel, this is our training camp lines. This is not what we think or want the lines to be on opening night, just so people are fully clear on that.
Fair enough. Good segue into the second line as well, where we've got Stützle and Connor Brown with Shane Pinto in the middle. Why are we going with the guy who only has 12 NHL games experience?
I'll keep it simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like, why? Like, I don't really understand why people are clamoring so much to get a different second line center in there. Stützle, Pinto, and Brown were an incredible line down the stretch. Like, I don't see any reason to try to get someone else in there other than Pinto, or try to move Pinto down the lineup instead of having him in the AHL to shelter him a little, if that's kind of your ideology. Don't do that. Just keep him where he's comfortable. I think, man, if you're Connor Brown, that's pretty sweet having Shane Pinto and Tim Stützle on your line, because he just led the team in goals. And if you want to do it again, how about being on a second line with two guys that can set you up and have a lot of offensive ability? But and a guy like Shane Pinto can also be defensively responsible as well. So I think this is a line that should stick together. I'm not in the camp of letting Logan Brown have a chance here. I don't think, I would love to give Colin White the opportunity, but I think he's had the opportunity and it just didn't work. So why try to change something that's worked in the past? Let's just keep this line together.
That's a very fair thought process. The Sens were 9-2-1 with this line playing together. So start with it. And if it doesn't work, then you can always shift around who's going to play center, whether it's Tierney, Logan Brown, or somebody else, a surprise perhaps. But I'm agreeing with this line wholeheartedly. I think that this might be the most exciting line to see play, because can they repeat what they've done? Like, Stützle and Pinto combined don't even have an 82-game NHL season under their belt. So when you think about that being a top six line, it might be scary, but you've got the defensive reliability on the right side in Connor Brown. So I think that you can kind of play around with this, and who better for Shane Pinto to learn if you want him to have a 200-foot game than to be on the ice and see what Connor Brown brings, shift in and shift out. So I love this as a top six line. I think it would be a shame if they don't get a chance to replicate what they did down the stretch. I mentioned 12 games for Shane Pinto. How about 7 points during that stretch? Tim Stützle had a hat trick in one of those games as well. So just keep them together. Why not? But this is where it gets interesting. This is how I have the third line, or we, I should say, the SensCentral third line. We've got the PTO on there, Tyler Ennis at right wing, Alex Formenton at left wing, and Colin White at center. How do you think this line would respond?
This is perfect third line, in my opinion. You've got a good balance of offensive flair with some good defensive capabilities, but also you get your specialist guy in there, and Alex Formenton. And if he stays on a third line and is up against weaker matchups, weaker defensive pairs, he's going to blow right by them. Like if they give him an inch, he'll take a mile, and that's why I like Formenton in this position, not in a top six role. Even though I think he could do that, just not quite yet. Keep him here. We talked about it, I think, in last show. Colin White and Tyler Ennis, they played a lot of time together, so they're familiar together. And also,
I'm still going wild with all those numbers from that. What we put up that graphic from Natural Stat Trick.
That was a lot of stats. Yeah, I mean, Stat Trick, that's what you're going to get. And Colin White, I think we have to accept he's a third line guy. Are we kind of married to the fact that he needs to be a centerman? I don't think so. I think there's still opportunity for him to move to the wing, and maybe Nick Paul move to center if that's the switch you want to make. But also, I like Ennis in the third line role. I think if you get him in a fourth line role, he's not. The point? We saw what happens in Edmonton, right? I think that's kind of the role he was playing there, and it just didn't work out. This guy scored 19 goals when he was with the Sens last time. So, or at least I think it was 19. Or was it 14?
14 goals
14 and 19 assists. Okay, yeah, correct. I had the numbers there. So that's pretty damn good. So why not give him an opportunity to try to repeat that? I think it's very likely they sign Ennis on a PTO also, because then they're going to be like, hey, Brady, we just chipped off $750K off that salary. So we're closer to the floor than you think. If you don't think we're going to go out and sign some old veteran defenseman for $3 million for 1 year, we'll do it. We'll do it, Brady. Look out.
Don't tempt us. Don't tempt us.
Yeah, exactly. Although Goody isn't available. Is Coburn available? I can see them trying to bring that back for $3 million. Yeah, there we go. So Coburn's just waiting by the phone like, man, this could be a nice payday for me. But anyways, I think this is a great third line. And this is the third line, if they do in fact sign Tyler Ennis, that I could see legitimately being a third line for the start of the home opener.
Same here. There is that right wing spot open, and why not have the guy on a PTO who you know has contributed at the NHL level before get that first chance? This is where it gets really interesting for me, and I mentioned it last week. I'm starting Logan Brown with Parker Kelly, and I don't care. You can call it the fifth line, the fourth line. This is how I would start the fourth line. I've got my two hardest working wingers in Parker Kelly and Austin Watson, and I'm saying, hey, Logan, you see that spot next to Stützle and Connor Brown where Shane Pinto's getting the start? A guy who was drafted 3 years after you in a round later? Well, if you want to get a chance between those two offensive-minded players, work as hard as these two guys. And if he can do that, then I think he more than deserves a chance to move up the lineup. And also, it goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyways for Logan Brown. This guy has to stay healthy through training camp. He can't miss a single second of on ice. He's missed too much time, and with the shutdown of COVID, he needs reps.
Definitely. And that's the thing. Mendez talked about it in his article. Logan Brown has 30 games of NHL experience. Tyson Jost, who was picked one pick ahead of him, has over 200 games of NHL experience. So that's a very good and fair comparable. And it's on opposite sides of the spectrum here. But where I would differ here, Ross, is I'm done dangling a carrot in front of Logan Brown. He's had those carrots dangled in front of him, and it hasn't worked. He was told, you're going to be playing with, what, wasn't he with Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson at the start of training camp last year?
Yeah.
He was told he was going to be given opportunities. He was told, you know what, just go to the minors for a couple games. We know you're going to light it up, and then we'll bring you back up right away. He's been told all these things. He's been given all these promises and lights at the end of the tunnel, and it hasn't worked. Honestly, if I'm the Sens right now, I'm saying we're putting you on the fourth line. How about trying to stay there? Don't try to reach for more. We're not at that level anymore. Try to reach to stay on the fourth line. And like you said, Parker Kelly and Austin Watson, they're not going to take a slow pace. If you're going to play with a slow pace and lack of effort, they'll cruise right by. Oh, man, Parker Kelly might steal the puck off Logan Brown's stick if he's skating slowly up the neutral zone. You know what I mean? He might just be like, I'll just do this because I want this more than you. So if Logan Brown isn't able to play comfortably in that role, I don't think you even give him much more options. You just say, like Troy Mann said, send him down to Belleville and tell him you got to be the best player in the AHL if you want a sniff of the show. Well,
unless he gets claimed. Of course, he will have to go through waivers this year, but the best time to try to sneak someone through waivers is at the start when everybody's doing it and everyone has confidence in their own players, right?
Didn't
Throughout
work
the
for
year,
Rudy Balsers, unfortunately.
yeah,
I'm
well,
still
we don't
sore
have to
about
get into
that.
I know you are. Oh, that's awesome. All right, line 5, and I believe this would be the end of what I have as the NHL grouping. I thought about putting Ridley Gregg at left wing here, but the Sens, you saw it in Belleville last year too. They are hell-bent that this guy's a centerman, and so be it. So we kept him at center. He's coming up a little bit later, but our 5th line, we've got Chris Tierney in between Pontus Aberg and Igor Sokolov. This line, you got a bit of everything here. Like Tierney can dish the puck. He can play a responsible 200-foot game. You got the sniper, and then you got Pontus Aberg, a guy with speed to burn.
Yeah, and he can also put the puck in the net. He's had some good seasons in the AHL and in the KHL. So
I was surprised. He's got over 100 games of NHL experience.
yeah, he was a big part of that Nashville team
Yeah.
a long time ago, right? So he definitely has the experience, and he's someone that I would love for him to be kind of the short-term placeholder in the NHL. Like, let's say a guy like Nick Paul goes down for a week or two, bring Pontus Aberg up just for a little short while, and he's a guy that can definitely do that. Chris Tierney is kind of like your healthy scratch press box centerman. He's a guy that you can plug and play in your lineup. And then Sokolov, look, we love Igor Sokolov, but I'm not of the mind that he should be playing in the NHL to start this season. I think maybe he can play and work his way in, but I don't think he really should. Even if he earns a spot out of camp, I think it's better for his development to stay in Belleville. And
top line.
Yeah, top line, obviously. Yeah, and that's what Troy Mann has said as well. Like, his quote, I think, is something very similar. Like, we know Sokolov can probably play in the NHL, but it's going to be much better for his development to have a full, comfortable regular season down in Belleville, and that'll help him out miles, and then he'll be ready for the NHL next season.
All right, let's roll through the rest of the lines because we still have a ton to get to on today's show as training camp is underway. The first on-ice session is tomorrow, our 6th line. So now we're talking about AHL. Well, in Ridley Gregg's case, probably a trip back to Brandon in the WHL. But Pills, you loved what you saw from Cole Reinhardt and Roby Yarventi as a duo. So we've got Reinhardt at left wing, Ridley Gregg, and Roby Yarventi.
Yeah, I need to keep Reinhardt and Yarventi together. Like, the way they were clicking in that second rookie game. I know, obviously, the top line was the story with Sokolov and Pinto, but I really liked what I saw from these guys in the secondary scoring role, and I think Yarventi is going to pop off this season. Like, I think people need to be on notice that once he gets comfortable and once Troy Mann can figure out the best ways to put him in positions to succeed, this guy's got such a good shot, such a good release that all he needs is the opportunities. And I think he can really have a good AHL season. So I want to see him in the top 6.
The next line, we've got Mark Kastelich at center in between Philip Daou and Carson Latimer. Again, you got lots of speed and then the size down the middle on this unit.
Definitely. And we hope Daoust is doing all right. Has there been an update on him? Is he going to be fully healthy and skating?
Crooker had the asterisk next to his name when the training camp roster came out, which meant he was injured, whereas Daou didn't. So it seems like he'll be ready to go. Nice.
Love that for him. He's going to be an exciting guy. We talked about him a couple weeks ago where what was the stat? It was like he was doing 7 dekes a game. He led,
led the
forwards or something.
Successful dekes a game. Yeah.
Right. So he's a shifty guy. And if you get him with a player like Latimer, I think Latimer also, he's got some skill there. And then Kastelich, he's not going to let anyone push these two around. We saw that when Crooker went down. He's not dealing with any of that crap. He's going to stand up for his teammates. So Kastelich is another guy that I think near the end of the season, we could see him come up and play a 4th-line center role for a limited time.
And the 8th line, the final line here, we've got Zach Ostapchuk, and he impressed at rookie camp, but he's still young. So we just have him in between.
And he's going back to the dub.
Exactly. Tyrell Goulburn, who's just on an AHL contract, a tough hit first, but ask questions later type winger. And then Cole Sherwood we've got there. And Scott Sabourin can fill in on this line as needed. But this is how we've got the final line going up. And now let's get down to the D pair right away. We've got Thomas Chabot. We got him with Nikita Zaitsev. We know he's going to start with Artem Zub, but I've seen this pair play well towards the end of the year. Zaitsev was playing his best hockey as an Ottawa Senator over the last dozen games. So again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'd like to see them roll out as close to the lineup that went 10-3-1 down the stretch just to see what you have in them. But what do you think about having Zaitsev stay up with Chabot?
Well, first, I think people need to get rid of their narrative remember that this is not your first year Ottawa Senator Nikita Zaitsev. This is not 61st ranked overall in SensCentral's organizational value rankings, Nikita Zaitsev. He has improved leaps and bounds in the last season. He's really shown that he's a much more competent defenseman in a much more larger role than we initially thought. And Thomas Chabot, I think he's Thomas Chabot. Like, he's this team's best defenseman. I think really he's going to help any defenseman that's with him. So get a guy like Zaitsev that can play a comfortable shutdown role. Hey, and put the puck in the net a little once in a while here too. So I think this is a great first pair, and especially, like, I think you could swap Zub and Zaitsev and you wouldn't be changing too much. But I think it's so much more important to have Zub with our second pair guy than it is to have Zub with Chabot.
Well, let's get right to it. The second pair, we've got Erik Brannstrom beside Artem Zub. From all accounts, it seems like Brannstrom's on the outside looking in when it comes to the NHL roster. But he played great with Artem Zub down the stretch, so why not allow him to try that again, right?
Yeah, and that's what I want, because Brannstrom, he needs a full kind of season in the NHL to really get comfortable and to really be able to show that he's ready and he doesn't need to go back down to the AHL anymore. So contractually, it's very likely that Brannstrom will go down because he's the only person that doesn't need waivers on this D-core here. So it probably will end up happening, but man, this guy's ready to be a top four defenseman. He's ready to get a legitimate chance. We found him a partner that makes him successful in the NHL. Why switch that up? So I would love to see Erik Brannstrom with Zub.
And there's 8 defensemen that have a chance. 7 of them are on one-way contracts, and Brannstrom is that 8th who isn't. So unfortunately, he might have to start down in the American Hockey League. If you're watching on YouTube, we've put up our entire defensive depth chart as we go on a roll on. We want to get to Tyler Boucher here momentarily, but just if you're listening audio only, we've got Victor Mete with Michael Del Zotto as the third pair, and then our fourth pair would be Nick Holden and Josh Brown. I almost said taxi squad there, but of course that is no longer. And then in the minors, we've got Jonathan Aspero with Jacob Bernard Docker. We've got Dylan Hetherington with Lassie Thompson. Xavier Bernard, an AHL only contract. He's with Max Gwinnett. And then another all AHL deal. We've got Zach Leslie with Colby Williams. Zach Leslie, an Ottawa area native. He brings a ton of physicality on the back end. Colby Williams, of course, a favorite of Troy Mann going back to their time in Hershey. And Pilsy, I do want your take on this last pair. We know this is a pair that will both be playing in the OHL, but Chandler Romeo made a great impression, I thought, in those pair of rookie games. And we have him, of course, with Big Ben Roger.
Yeah, he looked good out there, especially, I mean, when you're considering a 7th round pick that is highest level of competition was what, junior B, junior C? So, like, for him to be able to not look out of place and not stick out like a sore thumb in a rookie game with AHL, NHL potential guys, that's pretty impressive. So I'm excited to see what he can do with, he's with Hamilton, right? Yeah, Hamilton. So I'm going to be watching them closely.
Yeah, me as well. And Ben Roger, going back to London, we tweeted out, but we do believe he's in the running for a letter this year with London. So that would be really fun to see there. So that's how we have the defense lining up. In goal, it's pretty straightforward. Matt Murray and Anton Forsberg, your more than likely combination for Ottawa. And then it's a battle for Belleville's top spot. Will it be the 7-0 AHL record of Mad Sogard, or the guy who established himself in the NHL last year in Philip Gustafsson? Levi Marilainen also at camp. He's going back to Kingston, the OHL, and Kevin Mandolese as well. He'll be vying for a spot in Belleville, or he'll be off to Atlanta with the Gladiators. Pilsy, I believe you have a word from one of our favorite sponsors here before we get to Tyler Boucher.
Yeah, it's a longtime sponsor of ours, the exclusive sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's betonline.ag. Now, I will use this moment to say my second parlay of the season did not hit. It was close as usual. I'm usually not too far off, but it was close. But I think maybe tomorrow we'll get my football parlay going. But you got to make sure that you at least have a chance to either fade or ride my parlay. And the way to do that is to sign up today for free at betonline.ag. Look, They're the exclusive partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. We love you, loyal listeners, so we want to hook you guys up with a promo code and get you some bonus cash right away. If you sign up for a free account at betonline.ag and use the promo code Locked On, you're going to get a 50% welcome bonus. So how this works, Ross likes to say, put $100 in, bingo, bango, bongo, you get $50 of money to free play. Now, free play, you got to win it to earn it, but with Pillsy's parlay heating up, we're going to be ready for the regular season. Keep that $50 ready so you can ride Pillsy's parlay and win and earn that $50. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, guys. The regular season is so close. You can't wait any longer. Get in on the action. Don't forget to use that promo code Locked On to receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Guys, it's betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts.
All right, here he is. Our 10th overall pick from the 2021 draft, it's Tyler Boucher. All right, we now welcome a very, very special guest born in Arizona while his dad, Brian, was in the midst of a 13-year NHL career. His own hockey journey took him through the U.S. national team development program, where he put up nearly a point per game and dominated physically during this most recent COVID and injury-plagued season. Now he's settling in at Boston University, where he'll begin his freshman season after being selected 10th, yes, 10th overall by your Ottawa Senators in the 2021 NHL draft. Tyler Boucher, welcome to Locked On Senators. Thanks for joining us, man. How's it going today?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, pleasure. There's a ton we want to get into, including your take on a couple of stories your dad shared with us, but we always start our interviews off way back at the beginning. What are your earliest memories falling in love with the game of hockey? Obviously, you grew up quite around it.
Yeah, I think I got an experience. Not a lot of kids get. I think when I was little, my dad would pull me out of school. We'd go to the rink and I'd hang out there all day long. That's all I wanted to do. So it was just great being around the rink and kind of getting that atmosphere when I was young.
Yeah, now sticking with that atmosphere and watching your dad grow up being a goalie, did you ever have a time in your life where you thought, hey, my dad's a goalie in the NHL, this seems cool? Like a lot of kids were like, I want to do what my dad does. Was there ever a point where you're like, I want to be a goalie, not just play hockey, but I want to be a tendy?
I did have pads at one point, and I would throw them on like for street hockey and stuff. I played a little bit when I was little, but my mom, she wasn't having it. She wanted to go a different route. I think she would have went crazy if I was a goalie. So she shot that down, and I'm happy she did.
Yeah, no doubt. It seems to have worked out well for you as it has gone. And speaking of your dad, he was also a first-round pick. He went major junior, I believe Tri-City, WHL. How early on in your life did you know that the college route was the way you wanted to go?
I just kind of grew up, watching college hockey. I think from when I was young, I think that was just my dream. I didn't even know what, major junior was. Obviously until I got a little bit older, but when I was young, that was my dream. I'd go to, college hockey games when I was in Boston. It was kind of my dream. So I think that's what I wanted from day one, and I'm really happy with my decision.
Yeah, and that's a fair response, and it's a great. You're going to Boston University. It's a great landing spot, that's for sure. But if you were to go the major junior route, the Ottawa 67s own your rights in the OHL. Now, does the fact that it's a team that's in the same city as the NHL team that drafted you, does that kind of tempt you a little bit, or you just know that's the decision you've made and there's no turning back?
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny how that turned out. I mean, I gave my word to BU a while ago, and I'm going to stick to my word. So I'm focused on my season with BU, and I'm really excited for it.
So what were some of the big decisions? You mentioned growing up, you got to go to a few BU games. So it was kind of the atmosphere in the rink. Is that where you narrowed down your decision that was the school you wanted to go? And maybe what were the second and third choices had that not worked out?
Yeah, I was looking for, I was looking at all the East Coast schools like in Boston. So that was kind of where I was looking. I got a lot of family in Rhode Island, which is, not too far from Boston. So it's a good fit for me and my family. Growing up, my family here didn't really get to watch me play that much. So I think it's a close drive, and they get to see me, and I get to be close to family, which is pretty important to me.
So last 2 years, you've been at the U.S. program, which is in Michigan, and now being back on the East Coast, you mentioned being close to family is great as well. But last year, I want to get into this draft process a little bit because I'm especially curious being the COVID shortened season. Then you missed a significant amount of time with a knee injury as well. Were you worried that that would have negatively impacted just the fact kind of out of sight, out of mind among scouts? Or were you confident that your body of work in the years leading up to that draft year was enough to cement you to where you ultimately went in the first round?
I think I had a great start to this season. I felt like a completely different player from my 17th year. So yeah, I think what I showed, Ottawa really liked it, and yeah, it was unfortunate I had all those injuries and stuff, but I mean that's part of it sometimes, and you just gotta focus on what you can control, and that's kind of just what I did. I had some ups and downs, but really happy how it worked out.
Yeah, so leading up to the draft, there's a lot of intrigue. You don't know who's going to select you, when you're going to get selected. There's a bunch of teams that are probably interested in you, but you end up getting picked by the Senators. Now, how many conversations did you have with them leading up to the draft? And did you kind of get a sense like, all right, like they seem to be really interested in me. This could be a serious potential landing spot. I mean, we heard from Tyler Boucher. He got a little insider information right before the pick was announced, and he gave you a little wink right before when Ottawa was selecting. How much intel or how much information did you have and thinking that the Ottawa Senators could probably select you at 10th overall?
Yeah, I was kind of going up to the draft. I think, with having played 12 games, I knew I had a range, where I was going to go, but obviously I didn't, like you never know for sure. So, yeah, I think I talked to them once. I had an interview with them, and they were really drilling me with questions, and I kind of knew that they were interested. I think the style that I play is, I think it's kind of rare, and that's probably what they felt they needed. So and yeah, right before the draft or right during the draft, my dad kind of winked at me. I think someone, because it pops up on the table apparently before, so I think someone texted my dad in there, and he kind of just winked at me, and I was like, I just looked at him, I was like, really? And then I kind of just blacked out from there. I think, I watched the video over, it looks like, someone shot my dog or something, but I just really blacked out. I couldn't even think. So it was just an awesome moment. I just didn't really show it that well.
Well, hey, you're in front of a ton of people. It was the entire Team USA World Junior Summer Showcase was the next day, and a great moment right after your pick. Jake Sanderson, 5th overall the year before. He comes up. What were his first words to you?
Yeah, Sandy was pumped up. I think he just gave me a hug, and he was like, "Congrats, brother! Like, that's awesome. So excited." It was kind of just one of those things. He's a really good guy. He was a guy I looked up to at the NTDP. He's a great leader. And obviously a really good hockey player. Yeah,
so you've seen him for the last 2 years. What's your scouting report on Jake Sanderson?
The real deal.
Yeah, is that what you call him?
No,
I like that though, Sandy, the real deal.
Yeah, he's very, very good, and he's a great person, and yeah, I can't say any bad things about him. He's awesome.
Yeah, Sens fans are pretty stoked about Jake Sanderson, that's for sure. So now, I can definitely appreciate the fact that you get drafted and it's just like a whirlwind and you don't know how to settle in. Once you kind of settle in and you're like, after giving hugs and everyone saying congrats, once you settle in and you're like, all right, I'm picked by the Ottawa Senators. What are your kind of feelings like going into heading to the Ottawa Senators franchise here?
Yeah, I think I got to keep developing, get better, and, do what I got to do to get there. I think, it doesn't really matter where you get picked. Once the draft's over, it's in the past. So I'm kind of focused on my season at BU, obviously, but, working towards getting there.
Well, there's a guy whose footsteps, I mean, there's so many parallels actually between you and Brady Tkachuk, like the style you play on the ice, the both being born in Arizona while your dad's played for the Coyotes, both going to Boston University after spending time at the U.S. program. I'm not going to ask you if he reached out because knowing the kind of guy he is, he did. How soon after the draft did you look at your phone and Brady's in there giving you some words of encouragement?
Yeah, it's actually funny. The Wi-Fi was like so bad in my room, so I couldn't even get any FaceTime call. He tried FaceTime me I think eight times. He's pretty fired up. So it was funny. I think I talked to him for 20 seconds on the phone, but yeah, he's pumped up, and he's a great guy. He always reaches out and checks on me. So that's something I really appreciate. For him, probably not having a lot of time. So he's a great guy.
Now, did you know Brady before you were selected by the Sens? Did you guys have a relationship? Like Ross said, the parallels between you two are crazy. So you must have crossed paths a couple times, eh?
Yeah, no, I've known him for a little bit. So it wasn't just something random where he just calls me out of the blue or anything. But I think once I got picked, it was awesome because, I've known him for a little bit before. So he was just fired up, and it was a great moment.
Last year at the World Juniors, we put out the hashtag #USensA because it seems like every year they've got so many guys on the team. You look Josh Norris and Colin White and Brady, obviously, Tyler Klevin, the K-Train, as we call him, just dummying everybody out on the ice. But there's so many of you guys. So how many other guys in the organization do you have a relationship with?
I don't really know too much. I don't really know anyone, but a bunch of guys reached out after the draft, and that was really cool. So I don't really have I'm not really tight with any of them besides the K-Train and Sandy and Brady. But that's really it that I'm I'd say friends with.
That's awesome. Well, it's unfortunate that you're not able to be in Ottawa right now. One of the best parts, typically, you get the draft and then you're off to development camp right away. I'm sure you're seeing some of the photos online and all that. Any FOMO missing out on your first kind of glimpse of what could have been? You're not alone, right? Because Klevin and Sanderson aren't there either. But are you missing out a little bit on that?
Yeah, for sure. I saw it on Instagram, yesterday. I was like, oh, this looks awesome. So yeah, I wish I was there for sure, but we're all in the same boat. The guys who can't be there, so it's all good.
Yeah, and if you watched any of the rookie game, you definitely know that the Ottawa Senators have a style they want to play, and I think it's fair to say you fit that style: high tempo, physical offense. And now, what other players? We always hear the Tom Wilson reference, but what other players do you model your game around in the NHL, or that you just enjoy watching in the NHL today?
Yeah, my biggest three, I'd say Tom Wilson, Josh Anderson, Matthew Tkachuk. I'd say I like Brady too, but I like Matthew's awesome. I love watching him play. Just making everyone mad out there, just being a pest. So I'd say those are my three. That's kind of who I try to model my game after.
I like that. And now Brady's just got an extra chip on his shoulder if and when he hears this, that he's got to one-up his brother again. And Matthew, a shift disturber on and off the ice in a recent interview we don't have to get into. But that's awesome that those are three players who I think you can put them all in the same category and know what kind of player you're going to get in Tyler Boucher. Now, you got to keep the full cage on in college. Are we going to see you mixing it up after every whistle this year?
Maybe not every whistle, but definitely be a few. I can't really do much with a cage on, so it's pretty fun to play boxing out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, we saw you have your first glimpse of the half shield with the World Junior Summer Showcase. We're hopeful that that's not the last time this year you're representing Team USA. But going back to BU, we saw number 19. Is that official? Is that just a training camp number, or?
No, that's my number this year. I wore 13 last year. I got hurt, so I was kind of just like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this again.
You want a fresh start, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was taken anyways. So, I've worn 19 in the past, so it was good, and I like the number.
So it's not a thank you to Joe Thornton for missing your head back in the day when you were playing goalie in San Jose.
I didn't even think about that. No, it's not. Definitely not.
That's all. Hey, while we're on that topic, who are some of the players that your dad played with? I'm sure you're a rug rat going around the dressing room and all that, who you remember maybe went out of their way to make you feel like, special as a moment where, you're this kid and they're all these NHLers, bigger than life, that sort of thing, but really kind of took you under their wing as a friend of your dad's.
Yeah, definitely a long time ago, but Danny Briere was always, he's a great guy. I think
good Ottawa area guy.
Yeah, I grew up with. He lived in my town. I grew up with his kids, and I know still friends with them. They live in our town. Well, not anymore, but I grew up with them in elementary school and middle school. So definitely him. My dad was good buddies with Jody Shelley. He's a really good guy. Still, my dad's still really good friends with him today. So I'd probably those two guys jump out at me.
Love that. My final question for you. It's the same question I asked for your dad, but I'm going to reword it a little bit. What do people bring up more when they talk to you about your dad's career? The absolutely insane. And by the way, we're a goalie friendly show. 5 straight shutouts is absolutely unbelievable. Or when he nearly ruined your 3rd birthday party when Ovi scored that iconic corkscrew goal in a tough loss.
I think definitely people bring up the shutout streak, but I think it's more of a thing when every time someone sees that goal, they're like, that's your dad. Like, they don't really know, like, that's him. And I'm like, yep, that's him. But yeah, it's funny. But definitely the shutout streak. It's funny every time someone gets kind of close. He's always biting his nails in the corner of the room. So it's funny.
Now, do you remember that day at all? Because he was telling us that I know you're only 3 years old, so you might not, but he was telling us you were a massive Ovi goal. So like when Ovi scores that goal, are you jumping up and down cheering, or are you like, don't like that one?
Yeah, I definitely don't remember, but I was a huge Ovi fan when I was little. Like, I'd ask my dad, like, "Can you give me an Ovi stick? Give me an Ovi stick." Even though he addressed him, but I think then he got me one. I still have it today. It's like a blue CCM, like a super old one. It says like happy birthday to me, and it's like best present I ever got. It was awesome.
6 to be your dad. It was the 6th goal in the game. Sorry about that, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, good on Brian for being a good sport and being like, hey, my son loves this player, so I know he just kind of embarrassed me on national television, but I'm gonna be a better man and ask for an autograph after.
Well, hey, not to get too off track, but when Matthews scored 4 goals on Ottawa, by the way, Sens won that game. But afterwards,
not a big deal.
Craig Anderson signed a stick saying, "Thanks for the memories." So I thought that was kind of clever, similar. But Pills, you got a last one for Tyler, right?
Yeah, exactly. So final question for me, Tyler. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. We really appreciate it. Sens fans are going to love getting introduced to you. So you and the Boston University Terriers, you guys get your regular season started on October 8th. How excited are you to get the season finally started? It's been a while since you've been able to play in regular season games. And what are some of your goals for this season, your first college hockey season?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Obviously, been waiting a long time. I think last year with my injuries and stuff, I couldn't really get in the groove and play a good span of games. So I'm really excited to get a fresh start here. We got a really good group of guys, really good team. So I think we're gonna do a lot of good things this year, and I'm really excited. This is a great spot, and I'm just pumped up.
Yeah, there's worse places to be than Boston for sure. You get the bean pot too coming up. Hopefully you guys have a full barn there. And then World Juniors, man, we're going to be hoping and cheering for you to be able to represent Team USA once again, like you did at the program. And hey, you, Clevin, Sanderson, Sens fans are going to be real fired up for that. And then down the road, man, don't think we're not going to be watching college hockey every other night now. So, hey, you got a whole fan base watching, and really looking forward to seeing your development. So, hey, maybe we can do this again down the road throughout the season and check in on you. And hey, best of luck, man. So thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Stick taps to Tyler for joining us. Great kid. We can't wait to see all of his success coming up at Boston University. But we had so much to get into with the line combinations. And Tyler, we hope you really enjoyed that interview. We've got another great one coming up on Friday. So why don't we just tease that today? Because he was one of the players we were going to do in our organizational value rankings. But on tomorrow's show, we'll put our 4 there. Pilsy, Alex Formenton, the Sens speed burner. And what a perfect time to have him on a Friday, right? Flash Formenton Fridays, great ring to it.
And great way to head into the weekend with another awesome interview. It was so great to chat with Alex. Like Ross said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the Tyler Boucher interview. It's an honor being able to kind of introduce these guys to you guys. Like, it feels great, especially Tyler Boucher hasn't done a lot of podcast interviews. So it's great yeah, exactly. Any. So it's great to be able to kind of introduce you to these guys, and we get a chance to kind of put a name to a face. So that was awesome. And Formenton was a great interview. And hey, make sure you're watching on YouTube, because you get to see a sneak peek pet appearance from his dog, Dallas.
Awesome.
makes an appearance, and he tells us a little bit something that probably not a lot of people know about him, but he did start a clothing company, and he tells us about his goals and what he's working on there. So definitely check out his clothing company if you guys want to look good heading into the season.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for all that. We apologize, no time to get to our organizational value rankings today, but trust me, the 4 here on this list, and then we're into the top 10, all great names and lots of potential to boot. But for today, we say goodbye. Next time we talk, the Sens will be heading onto the ice. So we'll break down what training camp groups are. It's split into 3 groups, and let us know in the comments, who do you want to see start on a line together? You can give us, as we did, the entire 54-player roster, or you can break down, just say, I want this guy with this other player. So let us know for that. But for today, we say goodbye. Reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at SensCentral for up-to-the-minute stats, news, and analysis. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.